Well, happy Wednesday, friends. Thank you for taking part in our midweek meditation. Well, things are slowly opening up, but with stipulations. One of those stipulations is a face covering. Do you have yours yet? If you've had to get groceries lately, it looks like Halloween, doesn't it? Masks everywhere. But as you know, face coverings are nothing new. In fact, for today's meditation, I'd like to read to you a passage about a face covering from Exodus. Let's see what it says. This is from Exodus 34, verses 29 through 35. Moses came down from Mount Sinai. As he came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hand, Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone, because he had been talking with God. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, the skin of his face was shining, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the congregation returned to him, and Moses spoke with them. Afterwards all the Israelites came near, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. When Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he would take the veil off until he came out. And when he came out, he told the Israelites what had been commanded. The Israelites would see the face of Moses, that the skin of his face was shining, and Moses would put the veil on his face again until he went in to speak with him. So you see, Moses had to wear a mask too. But it wasn't to keep a disease from spreading. No, it was the glory of the Lord shining from his face that disturbed the people around him. So Moses put a veil on his face, a face covering, to keep the Hebrews from freaking out over his glowing appearance. Dear friends, disturbing or not, why would we ever want to mask the glory of the Lord? The Apostle Paul solved the problem with that too. Here's his commentary on that story, recorded in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 12 through 18. Paul writes, "Since then we have such a hope, we act with great boldness, not like Moses, who put a veil over his face to keep the people of Israel from gazing at the end of the glory that was being set aside. But their minds were hardened. Indeed, to this day, when they hear the reading of the Old Covenant, that same veil is there, since only in Christ is it set aside. Indeed, to this very day, whenever Moses is read, a veil lies over their minds. But when one turns to the Lord, the veil is removed. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And all of us, with unveiled faces, seeing the glory of the Lord as though reflected in a mirror, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, the Spirit." So Paul chastises Moses for his lack of boldness. Let that glory shine. But Paul goes on to hint that the reason Moses continued to wear the veil was to hide the fact that the glory was fading from his face. Would Moses' authority and reputation be undermined if the people knew God's glory was no longer shining from him? Perhaps. But then Paul pivots and uses the veil as a symbol of unbelief. If people don't comprehend the gospel, he says, it's because there's a veil over their minds, a hardness in the heart. It's a veil that only Christ can remove. And when Jesus does that, when the veil is lifted from our hearts and minds, then the glory shines. Paul concludes that all of us, with unveiled faces, I love that, with unveiled faces, that is, with the boldness Moses lacked, behold the glory of the Lord, and are being transformed into his likeness from one degree of glory to another. My friends, the glory of the Lord no longer shines from our faces, although your face might reflect your joy. But more importantly, God's glory is shining from our hearts, in the way we love one another, in the devotion we give to God, in our thirst for righteousness, in our passion for service. Don't let that glory be hidden. Let us, with unveiled faces, with all the audacity we can muster, rejoice in our transformation into the likeness of Jesus. I know we must wear these masks in public, or at least it's a good idea. but God's glory will shine through regardless. Don't veil your faith. Don't veil your love. With all boldness, let God's glory shine in you, especially now in our darkened world. Keep glowing, dear friends. We will let you know when services begin again at church. Until then, may God's glorious presence be reflected in all that you say and think and do. Amen.